I'm interested in, we have a couple surprises for you guys in terms of scenes, but you guys picked a certain number of scenes you were looking for, what scenes that were quote good and scenes that were quote bad, and some interesting selections. I'm curious, anybody here who really wanted to do this particular topic, if you could say a little bit about why you wanted to talk about good versus bad scenes, what you're looking for, what's most helpful for you.
Ooh. Could make a bad scene good.
Mm.
And really what makes a bad scene bad. It was much harder to find bad scenes than good scenes.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're watching bad scenes all the time, but when it comes down to actually finding them and picking them, it was quite hard. So if we have a bad scene, maybe really discuss why it doesn't work.
Yeah. We will definitely do that. I mean, one thing I noticed, it's not easy to find bad scenes, and I think I, as somebody who teaches writing and coaches writers, the kind of scenes that I see that are bad scenes, the kind of mistakes that writers, including myself, tend to make when scenes aren't really working, are mistakes you normally don't see in a finished movie. Because the finished movie, A, is written by a professional writer, and B, went through a certain development process to where most of those things have been ironed out. But we'll definitely talk about what those things are, as well as talk about the specific traits of the scenes in question here. I know Michael's eager to get to the troll movie. So is there anything you want to say, Michael, to start before you show that first clip?
Yeah, well, Erik and I had talked about this because I think it was hard from our end too, because here's the thing. Most of the time, what's wrong with a scene is wrong with the movie. And it's very hard to take a scene out of context with good movies for sure, because they're good because they build on everything that preceded them. And a lot of times they're bad. I mean, certainly you can find bad dialogue, but mostly they're bad because no character development has taken place, because we don't really understand what's going on, because the whole idea isn't credible, or the whole sequence. So to lift it out, I mean, how often do you see a movie that is terrific, but it has one clunker scene? That hardly ever happens, because they don't really work in a vacuum. You can improve a scene, but usually, like when I'm coaching someone, I'll say, well, this doesn't work, this dialogue doesn't work. But most of the time what we're talking about, as you guys know, because it was the same in class, we're talking about the overall story and the overall characters. And then with each scene, are you contributing to that bigger picture? So I think that some of the choices you guys made, I thought, well, that wasn't that bad, but it may be that you picked it either because there were things about it that had nothing to do with the script. It was bad acting or bad direction or bad cinematography or didn't have any money to work with or whatever. But the other thing you almost always have to get into is, okay, is this bad in and of itself, or did you not like what built up to it? Did you not like the overall story, and this was just one choice out of that? And I think one of the things we'll be talking about, or won't be able to avoid, at least for me, is talking about how does this contribute to the overall story, not just how does it exist for this 3 minutes or 4 minutes. That's all.
Yeah, and I think it'd be also interesting to hear the students talk about the different scenes as we play them, and what they're noticing that makes them think of something as good or bad that we can riff off as well. So maybe at some point after you show the first scene, we'll throw it open for that.
Yeah.
Do you want to go right to the first scene now?
Sure.
All right.
Sure. How could I not?
So without further ado, Arvid, I think we're ready for some Troll 2. Is it ready for us, is the question. Strap in, everyone. It's going to blow your mind. I don't know if everybody's here has seen all these scenes before, or if a select few of you picked them and the others don't know what's coming.
Yeah, 1 second.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, well, while we're waiting for that, does anybody care to explain who was involved in picking the scenes? Was everybody here involved in that?
I picked it actually.
Oh, you picked it. Why'd you pick this particular one?
Oh, I tried to come up with other scenes because the two films I picked was dinner scenes, and I couldn't find anyone else, and I what can I say? It's over the top.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a bad but a very fun movie to watch. So
That's what I was going to ask. What possessed you to watch the movie in the first place?
oh, it was with the friends. Movie night.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it your
Were you all
choice?
stoned?
Yeah, not
Seems
really.
like it would be enhanced with some, chemical substances. I really got more of a kick out of it than any of the other scenes, frankly. I just thought this is so bad. It was just like, this is fun. I mean, how low could they go?
Yeah.
But I'm surprised you could get that far into the movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, has everybody seen all the scenes, or some of you not knowing what's coming haven't seen these before?
I haven't seen this one.
No, I haven't either.
I'm excited.
You should be.
Because some of these are from movies that Michael or I had not seen ourselves. So like this one, I hadn't seen this movie, so it was kind of out of context, which makes it a little harder to evaluate because you don't know what's come before, what's come after, and what's, so much of what makes a scene work, unless it's the very first scene in the movie, is we're already invested in the characters and the story. We already have some sense of like rooting for something, caring about something, wanting to see something happen. And so then each scene becomes a step in that journey toward resolution of whatever the central story problem was. And so our reaction to the scene is not just in a vacuum, the scene itself, it's how is the scene advancing the story and contributing to the story, and how are the characters that we've come to know in this movie or this TV show, moving through this scene. So when you watch something that's completely out of context, you can't rank it in terms of those things. Arvid, are you having technical issues, or is it ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay, I think you could go ahead.
How about this? Yeah, that's it.
Grandpa! Don't let them eat, Joshua. For the love of God, don't let them eat.
Aren't you hungry, Joshua? Yes.
Stop them, Joshua. You're the only one that can do it. If they eat, they'll come to the same end as Peter in the story.
But how can I stop them?
Okay. You have 30 seconds to come up with some way to stop them.
That was amazing.
Okay. Do you guys any of you have any comments you want to make before we chime in? Or any of you have any comments to Victor, who picked this scene and just subjected it to it?
I just want to thank Victor.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah,
well
thank
done.
you.
Yeah.
That
It's a
was
bit-
so weird.
We've at least set the bar.
Yeah.
It's going to go hard to be worse. Okay, I'll chime in first since I was the one who said we've got to show this one. First thing I want to say, because there's a timer on the recorder, and I was very curious. The 30 seconds he had lasted a minute and a quarter. So just to build the tension. And so much of this is bad. As I say, you wouldn't have it in the script. Whoever thought they needed multiple shots as he slowly walked around the people and so on. But one thing I want to mention with this, to try and glean some lesson from it, is the idea of humor. And that is one of the things, Steve Kaplan, who's a friend of mine who's like a comedy expert, one of the things he says, one of his core principles is humor or comedy tells the truth. Now, I know this isn't a comedy, but they were going for some really humorous thing when the kid had to pee all over, I don't know what. I guess he was peeing over the frosting, so they wouldn't do it. But the problem with that, the thing that doesn't make it particularly funny, is it doesn't ring at all true. It doesn't seem reflective of anything that was reasonable, because all he had to do, he had 30 seconds, and all he had to do was go take everything away from them in about 5 seconds, and that would have been it. So somebody talking about this, I would imagine, thought, wouldn't it be funny to see this kid, or to imply that this kid had to pee all over their food, and then that would be gross. And I'm mentioning that because if you're creating humor in a story, or whether it's a comedy or not, first thing you want to say is, okay, is this reasonable? You can't just, comedy is not just having crazy things that seem like they'd be funny happen in a scene or in a movie. They have to be a part of the bigger sort of story, or the bigger sort of thing. So the best cautionary thing I could say is don't just say, wouldn't this be funny, and stop with the discussion there. Say, okay, is this reasonable? Does it, at least, is it credible? Is this truly the only way he has to do this? Or, and then if you want to go even deeper, which this story never thought about, is it reflective of character? Do we have a real underlying conflict that may be funny to us, but not funny to the characters there? So it just was like, this makes no sense. And as soon as it made no sense, it was sort of lost. The only humor is who thought this would be good, but in the context of it, it wouldn't be that way. The next thing I'm trying to squeeze out of this as an example we could learn from is the idea of the bad dialogue. I mean, there wasn't very much dialogue, but the dialogue, all it was one idea said back and forth. In fact, it wasn't even in sequence, because the grandpa said, you got to do something. And then he said, what am I going to do? And then the grandfather says, you've got 30 seconds to come up with something to do. It would make much more sense if he started out saying, you got 30 seconds, and then the kid said, what am I going to do? But if you were writing this in a script, all you needed was the one bit of information, in case we didn't have it, that if they ate whatever they were about to eat, I think it was supposed to be the frosting then, or whatever they were putting on it, then they would end up like some other character did. But we don't need to hear the kids say, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And we don't need the self-talk. And I'm only mentioning this, it seems obvious here, is because these are issues I've encountered in other much better scripts, where the writer feels compelled to announce the feelings, to announce the problem, to reiterate it over and over, rather than just let the audience figure out what's going on and let it carry on the way it normally would. I mean, he would say, you got to stop it. The kid would say, oh no, what am I going to do? And then he'd think about it, and he'd have to run into action right away. So you don't want that excessive over and over making the point of the scene, get into it, and the audience will keep up. It's much better to stay ahead of your reader or ahead of your audience and let them catch up than to belabor something. So we say, we get it, we get it, we get it, and not get, caught up in that kind of thing. The only thing I guess might be decent that they decided is not to actually show him peeing on the things. I don't think that would have been funny, but I kind of like the idea that they go right to he starts and then we see the consequences of it, because I think in our imagination it works better. It's about the only thing I could squeeze out of it that I thought was that they that they made a little effort or did something that might have been kind of clever. But as a lesson for how to make a scene better, those are the two main things I'd look at here, assuming that the plot is the plot. But thinking about, is this funny just because it's wouldn't it be silly, or is it funny because it's a real conflict with someone truly overreacting to it in a very logical, thought out way, and then trim the dialogue. So that's the best I could come up with as lessons for how to improve on this scene. Let me see what my partner in crime here came away with. He probably got a lot of nuance out of this scene that I didn't pick up on.
Yeah, you missed it, Michael. You missed the subtext.
I did.
You missed the thematic development in this scene. No, I agree with everything Michael said. As far as that transition, the hard cut to them washing dishes, the other clever thing they did was they have that sound of the water running. So it kind of sounds like the sound of peeing, but it's actually the dishes being washed. Did you guys pick up on that? So it kind of helped imply that, oh, that's what he was about to do when he unzipped his fly. Yeah, I definitely strongly agree with Michael's note in general about comedy. For all of you, when you work on comedy, the whole idea that the comedy has to come from a real place is probably the number one biggest mistake writers make when they're trying to write comedy, is they go for the funny instead of the real. And you have to somehow go for the real and have the real be funny. And that's not always easy to do, but when in doubt, go for what's real. Go for what the characters would really perhaps do or say in the situation. Hopefully the characters and their personalities and the situation at hand is going to lend itself toward comedy, because you've picked that material and constructed it in such a way that you're not writing a heavy drama, you're writing a kind of comedic situation and characters who behave in ways that are kind of funny because they're exaggerated in certain ways, like like the 8 characters of comedy book talks about. But so often writers write things that they think will be funny because they're super exaggerating, crazy, and the reader doesn't find them funny. In fact, gets angry at the writer because they feel like the writer's trying to force something that isn't there. And you're just like, I don't believe that would happen, so I'm not laughing. You have to believe it would happen to laugh. But as far as this specific scene goes, I actually think that if you just read this scene on the page, again, it depends on what the rest of the script is, and I have no idea, but I have a feeling you wouldn't be like, oh, this is so terrible from what's on the page. Most of what makes this bad is happening in the production of what's on the page, mainly the acting, which I think is really over the top and amateurish acting from, I mean, you can't blame a kid, but the kid and the grandfather, who are the only ones doing much acting, everyone else is just like frozen. It's just so over the top, meaning so exaggerated beyond what feels real, because they're going for a certain emotional effect or entertainment effect of like, it's supposed to be scary and have suspense and all that. And it's just played, too on the nose. And the other thing is just, the production design, the lighting, it just feels kind of amateurish, the camera work. And the music is so bizarre as it builds, and there starts to be this very weird, like 80s synth like effects that they're putting in to try and pump up the anticipation. And it's just overkill. It distracts you and just doesn't make you feel any of this is real. And that real thing is not just about comedy. Even in like a horror film or a film that has fantasy elements, usually you're establishing something fantastical at the beginning in the situation and what the world of your story is, but then you're really showing human beings behaving in a way that feels real given the situation. If it doesn't feel real, people tend to go, well, I'm not really buying into this. I'm not really invested in any of this. And so those are the main issues that I see. as far as how this fits in the rest of the movie, whether this is just a ridiculous idea, a ridiculous concept, whatever it is they're trying to prevent, and how this peeing is going to prevent it, I don't really know because I haven't seen the rest of it. Does anybody have any questions or things they want to add to this before we cleanse the palate with something completely different?
I think we're cool to move on to the next.
Yeah. Okay. So the next scene is really I think most people would recognize as a classic scene of movies from the last 20 years, and in terms of this whole thing of realness and acting, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Now this is a very long clip, so Arvid, I don't think we need to show all of it. Inglourious Bastards. But if you could start it, and I'll just maybe cut you off at a certain point. If you can hear me, I'll say we can stop there, and then we'll discuss.
Okay.
Thank you, Arvid. I love telling Arvid what to do. It's so satisfying. Press play. Press stop. Now. Faster.
Monsieur Lapadite, je suis au regret de vous informer que j'ai épuisé l'étendue de mon français. Continuer à le parler si peu convenablement ne ferait que me gêner. Cependant, je crois savoir que vous parlez un anglais tout à fait correct, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
Ma foi, il se trouve que moi aussi. Puisque nous sommes ici chez vous, je vous demande la permission de passer à l'anglais pour le reste de la conversation.
Certainement.
Well, I'm very familiar with you and your family. I have no way of knowing if you are familiar with who I am. Are you aware of my existence?
Yes.
This is good. Are you aware of the job I've been ordered to carry out in France?
Yes.
Please tell me what you've heard.
I've heard that the Führer has put you in charge of rounding up the Jews left in France, who are either hiding or passing for Gentile.
The Führer couldn't have said it better himself.
But the meaning of your visit, pleasant though it is mysterious to me. The Germans looked through my house 9 months ago for hiding Jews and found nothing.
I'm aware of that. I read the reports on this area. But like any enterprise, when under new management, there's always a slight duplication of efforts. Most of it being a complete waste of time, but needs to be done nevertheless. I just have a few questions, Monsieur Lapadite. If you can assist me with answers, my department can close a file on your family. Now, before the occupation, there were 4 Jewish families in this area, all dairy farmers like yourself. The Dolarac, the Roland, the Lavitte, and the Dreyfuses. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, those were the Jewish families among the dairy farmers. Nicolas, would it disturb you if I smoked my pipe?
Oh, please, Monsieur Lapadite, this is your house. Make yourself comfortable. Now, according to these papers, all the Jewish families in this area have been accounted for, except the Dreyfuses. Somewhere in the last year, it would appear they've vanished, which leads me to the conclusion that they've either made good their escape or someone is very successfully hiding them. What have you heard about the Dreyfuses, Monsieur Lapadite?
Only rumors.
I love rumors. Facts can be so misleading. Were rumors true or false are often revealing. So, Monsieur Lapadite, what rumors have you heard regarding the Dreyfuses?
Again, this is just a rumor, but we heard the Dreyfuses had made their way into Spain.
So the rumors you've heard have been of escape?
Oui. Yes.
never met the Dreyfuses, would you confirm for me the exact members of the household and their names?
There were 5 of them. The father, Jacob, wife, Miriam, and her brother, Bob.
How old is Bob?
30, 31.
Continue.
And the children, Amos and Shoshana.
Ages of the children?
Amos was 9 or 10.
And Shoshana?
And Shoshana was 18 or 19. I'm not really sure.
Well, I guess that should do it.
Okay, we can stop there. So don't you just want to keep watching?
Yeah.
The first thing I would note is this question of going with the real. To me, this scene feels very real. I'm completely caught up in what's happening, and I believe every moment of it. And you know, so much of it is. There's a lot of different elements to that are production elements, in contrast to the previous clip. The cinematography, the lighting, the production design, the costuming, and the acting are all on a completely different level. Christoph Waltz, won the Academy Award for that performance, and it's just what he does. But part of it's the dialogue. I mean, and probably how he was directed as well. But you know, it's not easy to create a villain character that we feel like we haven't quite seen before, who feels real and yet entertaining at the same time. And somehow they achieve that. I mean, we've seen so many villains in movies and TV shows who, the first thing you see in villains is they play the opposite. So they act all friendly, but they act friendly in this kind of smarmy way where we know that they're really evil, like not at all, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. You know, those kind of villains that are just like, oh, welcome to my humble abode, Mr. Bond. I hope you find it to your liking. Like, they're just oozing this kind of evil the whole time. Even though the words they're saying are these kind of friendly, sort of I'm your host kind of words. You've seen that a million times, right? But what he does here that's so different is that he plays it with this like, and again, a lot of it's the writing. It's hard to separate the writing from the acting, but he plays it as if he's truly friendly, as if he's truly visiting to like talk about life insurance or something, and it's just, there with any organization, there's some duplication of effort, most of it a complete waste of time. He spends all this time getting the pen ready and laying out everything in this like perfect way, which is very revealing of character, right? Sometimes the physical actions that aren't even dialogue help us understand character, and the way he sets up everything just so helps us understand that this guy is like this very precise, orderly, sort of matter-of-fact person, and they play against the obvious tension of the scene with him saying things like, of course it's your house, of course you should smoke. But he doesn't say it with that, I'm evil and I'm saying that from an evil perspective. He says it in this very flat way of like, oh, of course it's your house. And it's that much more chilling because the guy feels like he's just a guy there to do his job, even though there's this incredible subtext. And subtext is, one of the most important elements in dialogue. The prior scene didn't have any subtext. Some scenes, some dialogue doesn't, have subtext or need to have subtext. But in a case like this, the entire scene is subtext. So subtext is what's really being thought underneath the words, what's really being spoken but not spoken. So what would you guys say is the subtext of what Christoph Waltz is saying in this scene, which he never says?
If you're hiding the Jews and don't come clear of it, we're gonna kill you as well, or punish you as well.
Right. And what's the subtext of what the farmer is communicating?
Basically, can't you just leave me alone, I suppose? Can't you just exit the house?
Yeah.
What's he feeling?
Nervousness, I suppose. Yeah, fear.
Abject terror, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we know at a certain point, especially after this, this movement of the camera down to see the people, we know that he's lying. I don't know, I can't remember when I first saw it, if I sensed that he was lying before we realized there were people under the floor or not, but from that point on, the scene goes on for quite some time after this. Then we really know he's lying, and it takes the subtext in a whole other area, because now we know he's trying to cover up that there are people there. He's not just scared of the Nazi, he has a truth that he's hiding that he knows is going to be fatal to perhaps everyone involved if it comes out. Other thing I want to point out about this scene is that when you have a scene where you know that violence could break out at any second and is likely to, you have it so much easier as a writer or as a filmmaker, because the audience just is so on the edge of their seat about, oh my God, is violence going to break out at any point? What's going to happen here? It's like the highest level of stakes you can have in a scene or in a movie or TV show are life and death stakes. And when you feel in a particular scene, and this is what Tarantino does over and over in this movie and in all his movies, he has that benefit of he's almost so constantly writing scenes where you know huge violence could happen at any second, and you're like waiting for it. Some of the other scenes you guys picked that we're not showing also had that element. Mainly I'm thinking of Sicario is a similar thing where there's all this tension because we can tell violence is perhaps about to break out and we're on the edge of our seat and we don't know how it's going to break out, who's going to initiate it, when it's going to happen, who's going to end up alive or dead at the end of it. But you on a human level, you can't help but be kind of like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? So that gives you a great advantage when a scene has that, and and obviously that's the underlying element of this scene that makes it work even beyond everything else. A few other qualities of good scenes I would point out that I would repeat as we look at other good scenes throughout this. Number one, you don't know what's going to happen next, but you want to know what's going to happen. You're very strongly invested and interested in what's going to happen next, almost to the point where you don't want to turn off that scene, right? I kind of wanted to keep watching. And if you hadn't seen this before, I'm sure you probably want to keep watching. There's tension and conflict that builds. So there's some inherent conflict to the scene. When I talked earlier about scenes that you normally don't see in a produced movie because it wouldn't get that far, but you see a lot of times from writers who are starting out or from scripts that aren't really producible scripts, are a lot of scenes that actually don't have conflict and don't have a strong agenda. What I mean by agenda is you have a character coming to the scene with something that they want and are trying to achieve, and there's some conflict to that. And the conflict usually comes in the form of another character. And usually you're experiencing the scene through the emotional point of view of somebody. So in this scene, you're experiencing it, I think, through the emotional point of view of the farmer, who, before this starts, the farmer's in his house and he sees the Nazi cars coming up the drive, and you can tell he's scared already, and he tells his family to go do stuff, and he is getting mentally prepared for this meeting. So it puts you in his frame of mind right away because you know he's scared. And so in this scene, his agenda is basically don't die, which is the most dramatic agenda you can have in a scene. Get through this alive, don't get caught, don't make the Nazi mad, basically, right? And then the tension around that builds and builds throughout the scene as the guy, the Nazi asks these series of questions that force him to have to, weigh his answer and try and seem not guilty as he answers. And it builds to an incredible climax, which happens after where we stopped. So I always say a good scene is like a story in miniature. It's got a beginning, middle, and end to it. and it's focused on a problem, just like a story is. So the problem is whatever the basic conflict of the scene is. Someone has an agenda, and there's something in the way of that agenda. This farmer's agenda is to just get through this peacefully and be fine. What's in the way of that is he's facing the devil, who's very smart and very intuitive and is not going to leave until he's gotten what he wanted. And he probably really strongly believes this guy's hiding the Dreyfuses, or he wouldn't be there. So it's a very difficult thing for this farmer to achieve his agenda in the scene. There's a lot in the way of it. Another thing a great scene has to go, or even a good scene has to go along with an agenda, is a point of view. Meaning we're seeing it from a certain character's emotional point of view, in this case, the farmers. And a lot of times you'll see scenes where characters, first of all, there's no agenda or conflict. Characters are just like talking and exchanging information, or kind of getting along or being happy, which makes for boring scenes typically. And secondly, you'll sometimes see scripts where, and this is obviously things you guys want to avoid and learn from, where there's not really one character's point of view driving the scene, where it's not about this character wants something, here's why they want it, here's what they feel about it, here's why we should relate to how they feel about it and why they want it, and emotionally invest in them to the point where we almost feel like it's happening to us, which is kind of how we feel for this farmer as the scene goes on. It's like this Nazi's questioning us. We start to feel the fear that the farmer is feeling. Which is what you want to achieve with your audience. But if your scene doesn't have a point of view, in other words, it's not about a particular character and what they want and feel and are trying to achieve, but it's just characters who we're looking kind of down at objectively or from a distance objectively, it's not as compelling. Screenwriting should be subjective, meaning it's the subjective experience of a particular character from scene to scene. And it can be different characters in different scenes if you have a multi-story movie or TV episode. And this movie has multiple stories within it, because you have the whole Brad Pitt and his crew is a whole separate part of the story. So point of view, strong driving emotion, and last but not least, fun to watch. And so much of what makes a scene fun to watch is that it has that inherent emotional content to it that I just talked about, but also there's something about it that's entertaining, something about it that it stimulates positive emotions to watch it, even, well, positive, I should say desired emotions, right? Because this scene is stimulating fear to some degree, but it's also stimulating a kind of like fascination and even amusement, and just you're kind of awestruck by this character and intrigued by the way he conducts himself and the way he sort of talks through what he's trying to do in the scene, this Nazi character. And again, a lot of that is a writing, but some of it is the performance. So you want to be entertaining, but the entertainment comes from a very real place. And what's real here is the guy is doing a job. It's actually a historical, thing that this is pulled from, that there were people that did that job and that did the kind of things that he's doing, and the way he's talking about it and the way he's doing his job. There's never a point where you go, oh, I don't believe that Nazi would say that or do that. Or, oh, the way he's acting, it feels over the top or unbelievable. He's definitely a kind of extreme version of a certain kind of character, but not so extreme that it crosses that line where you're like, yeah, I don't buy this. In fact, you're like, I totally buy this. This guy is like terrifying, and kind of how mundane he is. They don't try and make him this, and certainly Tarantino does this with some of his characters. He makes them these over the top like psychopaths. But this guy is, the believability, I think, is kind of what makes it so chilling. You're combining something that's very extreme and like terrifying and evil with something that's so grounded that you really get caught up in feeling like you're experiencing it yourself, I believe. So it's enough from me for now. Michael, do you want to chime in at this point with your thoughts?
Sure. As we always seem to say, I agree with everything you said. You brought up a number of things I hadn't thought of, but there's a couple of things, and I'm also going to react to some of what you said or reinforce it. One of the first things I thought too was about the subtext being brilliant. And I don't know if anybody watching this ever follows golf, but Jack Nicklaus, some people think the greatest golfer ever, he at one time said, or maybe has said it many times, he always had an advantage going into the tournament because he was just so far above everybody else. And he said the advantage was, number one, I knew I could beat my opponent. Number two, he knew that I could beat him. So whoever his opponent was going in thinking, this guy's way better than I am. But number three was, and he knew that I knew that he felt that way. So it was that idea that not only am I superior, but I know that he looks at me that way, and that gives me a big advantage. And I thought of that with this because the way that Waltz, I never remember, I want to say the real names of characters, but what he was, that's how he's sort of playing this. And I thought that the one line I loved, he said, I don't even know if you know who I am. Of course, he knew he would be widely known because he was so fearsome. And if he's the Nazi hunter, he's the Jew hunter there, they'd all be aware, especially someone who's hiding Jews. But he says it very nonchalantly. And he says, well, yeah, I've heard. And he said, oh, tell me, what do other people say about me? And to me, it sounds like, oh, cool, I'd like to know this in a very light way. But what he's really doing is he wants to remind the guy that my reputation is, I'm going to wipe everybody out. I'm going to kill you. And so it's a very subtle way, knowing there's a subtext that the other guy's going to pick up on, that he's conveying how frightening he is, how powerful he is without coming in. The on the nose version would be, do you know who I am? Do you know what kind of power? You know I can kill you if I want to. That subtext makes it not only stronger, and the subtext better, but also it increases that kind of conflict and tension you're talking about. Another thing I wanted to mention is, imagine the scene if, there are really three ways you could go with this scene, but the typical way is the scene opens with the whole group of people. Here comes his car, and the farmer says, hurry up, get into the cellar. So for the whole scene, we know that they're down there, and the tension of that would be great. Absolutely. The second way you can play it is never reveal it. Make it a surprise at the end of the scene when we think he's finally gotten rid of the guy, and we have come to believe perhaps that the farmer isn't doing anything wrong either. And then we don't find out they're there until the gunfire starts and we see him being wiped out underneath. And there's an argument for both, because there are two devices that you always want to be able to use. One is what I didn't make this up, but what I first learned is superior position. Superior position means that the reader or the audience knows something that some of the characters don't know. Superior position would be when we know that the Jews are underneath the floorboards, and seemingly the Nazi colonel doesn't know that, okay? So that creates anticipation because we're wondering what's going to happen when that character finds out what we already know. It's the stock and trade of horror movies. We know that the demon is inside the closet and the hero doesn't know. Or in Jaws, we know the shark is out there because we hear the music or see the fin. So that would be superior position. But the other kind of antithetical device you want to be able to use is curiosity. We don't always want to know what's going to happen next. We want to wonder. And the beauty to me of this scene is he so brilliantly uses both of those. He starts out creating curiosity because we really don't know. I mean, you keep thinking, well, yeah, but why would this be here if they weren't there? But I seem to remember the first time I saw it coming to a point where I say, gosh, maybe he's not doing anything wrong. He's giving all the right answers and he seems very calm and so on. The farmer, I mean. So maybe that's it so when the camera goes down and then we see they're there, it's like comes as kind of a surprise there in a certain way. We always thought they might be, but now, oh my God, they really are there. And by starting with the curiosity, and then having a superior position at the midpoint of the scene, I thought that was just a brilliant way to do it, to make use of both of those. And it was one of the reasons that this scene could extend so long. It's one of the things that make, I agree with you. Tarantino to me is the master of creating tension that will last longer than you ever think it should. I mean, I'm wondering when people saw this, they had to do it because it was Tarantino, and by then he was famous. But imagine seeing a script or having a pitch meeting where he says, this is going to be about his, this horrific, evil Nazi, and we're coming up against it. It opens with a 10-minute scene of two people talking. And that's pretty much it. It was like, no, you can't do that. But the brilliance is he did it in such a way that it just capitalized and built that emotion using those two devices. Another thing you mentioned, Erik, that I wanted to expand on is the idea of every scene is a story in itself. Every scene is about desire and conflict. If characters don't want something, or at least one of the characters doesn't really want something that's going to be resolved or expanded on by the end of that scene, there's really no reason for it to be there. It's just a static moment of watching people that aren't moving anywhere. But the other thing about that is, not only does the scene have to have that, but whatever that desire is, it has to relate to the overall story. So if you think about this in the context, it's really a prologue scene. We're going to jump ahead in time after this. But one of the jobs you have as a writer is, if there's going to be a nemesis character, if there's going to be a villain or an opponent or someone, you always want to clearly establish that that character is way more powerful than your hero is. So this scene, the really, if you think about it, the whole purpose of the scene is to introduce, what's his name? The Christoph Waltz character, you remember? Is it Colonel somebody? Okay, not going to worry about it. Huh?
Landa or something.
Yeah, Landa, okay. So it's to establish not how evil he is, because that's just weakness. I mean, you might consider him evil, but if that's all he is just an evil entity, that's not enough. We need to know that whoever the hero is, even if it's Brad Pitt and his crew, it's going to be so difficult, next to impossible, to overcome this guy with not only his power, but his intelligence and so on. And so the way that is established, again, like Erik said, it's not to make him someone who twirls his mustache and, I do this. He comes across as almost banal in a certain way. I mean, he's so everyday, but he's so brilliant. And we see we see how in every moment of that, how it is. And then at the end, when he finally figures it out or gets the farmer to confess so he can stay alive, he's so bloodthirsty that now we know whoever our hero is going to be in this, or in this case, our multiple heroes, at one level, they're going to come up against this guy. And another thing about that, and you sort of touched on this, Erik, is when you're creating your villain, no villain sees himself as a villain. And so you always want to convey the idea that they are somehow justifying what they're doing. Either they have their own ideals or they have their own motives, but it never seems like I'm doing this just because I'm a sociopath, although the argument could be made that perhaps he is. But I think for him, it's very clear. He thinks, I've got a job to do and I'm going to do this brilliantly because that's how I succeed. But he's also, it reveals, filled with self-interest. But we don't get the feeling that he's there to do this just because he's a sadist or just because he's a psychopath. He has a point of view and we can sort of understand that. And because of the way he does it, he's almost in a weird way sort of likable. When it comes to that entertaining part of the story, it's fun, that I think comes into it. And the last thing is, and I'm also spinning off what you said about make it an enjoyable scene or fun to watch. One of the things any good screenplay and any good movie is going to do is it's going to combine familiarity and originality. So if you're seeing a scene that seems like nothing that you've ever seen in real life or on the movies, and it's like, what's going on here? Or to see a movie where it's so bizarre, those are usually not very successful movies. Movies need to be grounded in reality. They have to have some connection to what we regard as real life and to other movies we've seen and so on. But at the same time, if it's going to be really fly, if it's going to be that enjoyable, that fun, that well written, and that well performed, it's got to bring something new to the party. And I think that's one of the things that contributes or makes this so much fun to watch, is because we've seen this situation 100 times. If you've seen enough war movies and cop movies where they're sweating somebody in the thing. But I don't remember ever seeing a scene that you could say is exactly like this. It's like he's going to take an almost cliche situation, question somebody and try and get the truth out, you know, where are the Jews hiding, or what did you do, and try and squeeze the truth out of a guy. But he does it in such an unusual, both kind of charming and matter-of-fact way, and it sustains so long. And the character who's being questioned seems himself to be quite cool. I mean, it's the fun of that to me was like when he lights the pipe. Most movies, most scripts or movies you've seen, his hands would be shaking with that match, and he's not at all. It's like which is one of the reasons we're not sure. So he's quite cool, but at the same time, we know that he's trying his best to do it, but he's nowhere near as cool as Christoph Waltz is with the secret he has. But we still don't know they're down there, because of course he would be nervous, because even if you're not hiding anybody or doing anything wrong, you know, a Nazi colonel comes in who's known for killing everybody around you, you're going to be nervous. It's like nobody can't be nervous if a cop knocks on the door, no matter whether you've done anything wrong or not. So that idea that Tarantino's taken a very familiar situation and found a way to put a new twist on it, I think that greatly adds to the fun of it. That idea, wow, I've never seen exactly like this before, but I know where I am. It's a familiar place to me, but I want to see how this plays out differently. And I think that's it. Best I could do after you covered all those things so well, Erik. So there you go.
I was nodding my head. Again, everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that's a very good point, like the likability. Does anybody have any questions, things that they would like to add, whether in the room or people watching online?
I have one question. Why do you think they decided to show the people hiding below the floor when they did? I was thinking if it could be around midpoint in the scene, like halfway through or something like that. But I'm not quite sure. We didn't see the whole scene because I actually, as you said, did the decision to put it in the middle of the scene or somewhere around that, and not in the beginning or in the end of it. So I want to. What do you think about the place of that?
I think it is. I think it probably is around the midpoint, I'm going to guess. I mean, I think Michael raised great points about, like, you know, you get the benefit of both the not knowing and then the superior position for the second half of the scene. I don't know. I think it's like they've just said all their names. And so it's like if you're writing this scene and you've written all the dialogue and you're trying to figure out at what point should the camera show the people, I would think after going through all their names and making them human beings in the audience's eyes is probably a good time. What do you think, Michael, as far as the reason they did it when they did it?
Yeah, I was sort of wishing when I heard that question that I really timed out the scene. I would guess that it was midpoint. It may be a little further than midpoint, but logically, if in terms of story structure, if you think about the structure of an overall movie, the midpoint of a movie, what you guys know, you've heard me call the point of no return, that's a point where a character does something that makes them fully committed to achieving their goal, and as a result, the outside world is going to start closing in. The conflict from the outside world is going to increase. If you take that principle and you say, well, the farmer does nothing different there, but in revealing it, we've come to the midpoint, so this is where we need to see the bigger commitment that this farmer has made, and now we realize, uh-oh, the outside world really is coming in on this group of Jews he's hiding. I don't know without going back and timing the rest of the scene between now and when he actually orders that they, or when the guy confesses. But sort of artistically, I think that would make sense. Beyond that, I'm guessing this, well, with Tarantino, it's so good, he might have instinctively known that's where it was going to be and that's how he shot it. But it does come down to, at a certain level, they did it because instinctively it just felt right. And when you see the scene, and I've seen this movie several times, it always feels like exactly the right place because it's always so emotional at that moment.
Yeah, people also say the midpoint raises the stakes, and this, raises the stakes in the scene in a gigantic way. Anybody else questions or things they want to add? Did anybody not like this scene? Did anybody not think it was an example of a good scene? And anyone want to admit it now that we've raved about it so much. But I'm curious, did anybody felt like it went on too long or it was just too dull with all the dialogue?
Yeah, I think so.
And at what point watching the scene did you lose your interest in it? Or were you not interested from the get-go?
Well, I mean, I've seen it before, so it's a little hard to say. But I think the dialogue before the revelation, it's a little too long for my taste. It's too dull, so to speak.
Did you feel that way the first time you saw the movie? Do you remember?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I like asking that because there's no movie to go see that everybody likes, but you want to be sure that even if you don't like something, you can take away some realization or some lesson from it. And so if that's the case, then it tells you again, when you're creating scenes of dialogue or scenes that are so static, you want to make sure and think harder about, have I tried to extend this too long? Is this going on too long without something different happening or whatever it was? Anyone else have any questions or comments about it or what have you?
I think we're good here.
Okay. What's next? I think.
Well, you have a bonus scene that nobody knows is coming. That is the first scene of a movie that I've actually never seen. So I'll be watching this scene.
Okay.
Right?
I postponed this. I postponed this so you'd have plenty of time, Eric, to see the movie. And you still haven't gone to see.
Was I supposed to see the movie? I thought you wanted my reactions off the cuff, having not seen it.
Oh yeah. Now that I say so, I think that's okay. So even though I'm going to talk about what I think, we'll see what your reaction is because. This is well, you'll know, I think, because we'll see, this is the very opening. I think we'll see the credits, but this is the beginning, two scenes, two sequences, I guess you'd say, from Hidden Figures.
Isosceles, scalene, equilateral, 16, prime, 18, prime, 20, 21, 22.
West Virginia Collegiate Institute is the best school for Negroes in the state.
It's the only school past the 8th grade anywhere near here.
Isosceles, scalene, equilateral, rhombus, trapezoid.
Catherine's in the 6th grade.
They want to take her early.
Tetrahedron, dodecahedron.
They're offering a full scholarship. All you have to do is get there.
Miss Coleman, why don't you solve the equation on the board?
We took up a collection amongst the teachers and such. It's not a lot, but it's enough to help get you settled in. That's more than kind, Miss Sumner.
If the product of two terms is 0, then common sense says at least one of the two terms has to be 0 to start with. So if you move all the terms over to one side, you can put the quadratics into a form that can be factored, allowing that side of the equation to equal 0. Once you've done that, it's pretty straightforward from there.
In all my years of teaching, I have never seen a mind like the one your daughter has.
Hurry on now, love.
You have to go.
Let mama tip you in.
You have to see what she becomes.
Okay, try to turn it over now. Catherine? Mary! Somebody!
Catherine, quit staring off into space and turn the damn car over.
I got it. Not deaf.
I wonder sometimes.
Here goes. Yeah, it's the starter. That is definitely the starter.
The starter is starting to make us late. We all gonna end up unemployed riding around in this pile of junk to work every day.
You're welcome to walk the 16 miles or sit in the back of the bus.
I won't do neither. I'll hitchhike. Girls.
No crime in a broken down car.
No crime being Negro, neither.
Button it up, Mary. Nobody wants to go to jail behind your mouth.
I'll do my best, sugar.
Not a great place for three of y'all be having car trouble.
We didn't pick the place, officer. It picked us.
You being disrespectful?
No, sir.
You have identification on them?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We're just on our way to work at Langley. NASA, sir.
We do a great deal of the calculating, getting our rockets into space.
All three of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, officer.
NASA. That's something. I had no idea they hired.
There are quite a few women working in the space program.
Damn Russians are watching us right now. Sputniks. You girls ever meet those astronauts? Mercury 7?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. We work with those gentlemen all the time.
Those boys are the best we got. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
We got to get a man up there before the commies do.
Absolutely.
Whole damn country's counting on them.
That's for certain.
Hard being of service is broken down on the side of the road, though.
Right, right. What, y'all need a tow or something?
No, thank you, officer. I think I got it. Just give me my... Just need to bypass the starter.
She's good at this stuff. Woo! That a girl. We're all set.
Well, hell, least I can do is give y'all an escort. I imagine you're running late to work.
Oh, no, sir. We wouldn't want to bother
That
you.
would be wonderful, officer. Thank you so much, sir.
Follow me.
I'm driving. Hurry up, George, before he changes his mind.
We're coming. Hold your horses.
Look at here. Can you move like that? Lift me up.
Yes! Mary, slow down. You're too quiet.
He said to follow him.
He didn't mean up behind.
No sleep.
Dear Lord, I don't even know where to begin.
Oh, I'll tell you where to begin. 3 Negro women are chasing a white police officer down the highway in Hampton, Virginia, 1961. Ladies, that there is a God-ordained miracle.
And tomorrow, I'm riding the bus.
Okay, Eric, it's on you. Number one question is this a case where you would want to keep watching?
Actually, I have seen this movie.
You lied or you forgot?
I don't know when you said Hidden Figures, I don't know what I was conjuring in my mind, but it was some other movie that I'd heard of and hadn't seen, but I have seen this. I would say. I don't
think we're supposed to use porn in this class, you know, so.
You know, I mean, I remember watching it and it was like my wife wanted to watch it and I was like, okay. And I was like, I personally was somewhat interested, but not hugely interested. And I think I would say, well, we really had two scenes here, right? We had the scene about the little girl and then we had the scene about the three adult women. Mm-hmm. The little girl, I felt that was played a little bit too schmaltzy. You guys know the word schmaltzy in Sweden? What that means?
No idea.
It means like it's just, you know, the music, they're just milking the emotion of it so strongly that it's like, okay, I get it. She's really smart. They're black. This is a big opportunity. You know, it's like, I thought the little girl's acting was great, but the rest of it, I felt they just were laying it on very thick. You know, yes, that's such a great opportunity, but she's only in the 6th grade. I don't know. I just felt like I'd seen this movie before and like she goes up there and we all know what's going to happen, which is she's going to be brilliant. And then they're all looking at her dumbfounded like, oh my God, she's so smart. We've never seen anybody this smart. I just thought it was just kind of like, I don't know, predictable, manipulative, effective in its own way. You certainly, you know, want to see this little girl succeed, but there's really no conflict as well. I think it's part of the problem because there's nothing in the way for her. It seems like people are going out of their way to help her, and we don't have any sense of it's a problem. You know, they've raised the money, they've made the recommendation, whatever had to be done is done, and it's all going to be good. So I didn't love that scene, although I love the little girl. The second scene I like better because there is a conflict and we don't know what's going to happen, you know, especially once the cop shows up. Prior to the cop showing up, it's kind of like establishing character and, you know, going for some comedy. But I just felt like, you know, each character is just so much a type that it wasn't that interesting to me. They didn't feel so much like real people. It was more just like, this one's into her makeup and this one's the daydreaming smart one and this one can fix cars. And it just felt a little bit one-dimensional to me. However, when the cop shows up, then it's a whole different story because the cop, then it starts to become like Inglourious Bastards, right? You don't know what this cop's going to do. And I think it's very effective in having like the white, probably racist, sexist cop who's really an idiot. And what's he going to do to these poor women? Like, I didn't actually remember it going the way it went. I remembered him doing something really bad. I don't know why. I was surprised when he was like, okay, I'll give you the escort. Like, I thought it was going somewhere that it didn't go. I don't know why. But the thing is there, you don't know where it's going to go. And so there's now tension. There's now conflict. 3 women by the side of the road, not necessarily that much conflict. All right, so their car is broken down. They're going to be late. Do we really care? Do we really know what their jobs are? Is it really going to matter that much if they're late? It's kind of like just sort of lays there for me. But once the cop shows up and it's like, okay, it's not illegal being black, right? Like, don't get us arrested with your mouth. Then there's a lot of tension. And so I'm very interested in what's going to happen once he's there, especially because he's, you know, he's immediately hostile. And there's immediate a flare-up of conflict right away. You know, could have gone in different directions. He could have not believed them that they work for NASA. He could have been like, you're all janitors, right? Or some like thing like that. Or, you know, asked for ID and they didn't have it. Like, it could have gone to a much more tense place. And in a way, the fact that it didn't makes me a little less excited about watching the movie because it's kind of like, okay, it was sort of a moment of there could be a problem, but there really isn't a problem. He gives them an escort. And so I always like the problems. I mean, in Inglourious Bastards, there is a real problem there, right? This is kind of like, oh, we're hinting and faking like there could be a problem. No, there isn't a problem. And it's kind of how I felt about the movie in general. I didn't dislike it. And it's certainly a great subject for the world to know about. And I think you definitely sympathize with these women and it certainly does build problems for them. But it didn't grab me as, you know, strongly as some others might. So it was kind of a liked it okay sort of movie for me.
Well, I'm really regretting letting you go first because Because now I've got to justify everything you didn't like because I love the movie and I love the opening and I picked it. You lied when you said you hadn't seen it. I would rather you hadn't. Maybe you would have been more confident in that. So
this makes the class more fun because conflict. We want conflict, right?
Yes, it's unusual that we're going to disagree. And I don't care what your next choice is. I am lambasting that movie. Okay, so let me tell you, regardless of what this yo-yo said, let me tell you why I thought the scene worked well. One thing I would point out, this isn't Inglourious Bastards. It's a different genre. This is trying to do something different. He seemed awfully impatient to have high-level conflict. I don't disagree, you want conflict, but to me in the prologue there is some. They don't know how they're going to get there. I mean, you're talking about, what, a 2-minute scene or something like that. But if you think about what they wanted to get across, we needed, number one, in the prologue, the first thing you always have to do is create empathy for your hero, okay? And I think introducing her as a little girl where one thing that will create empathy is undeserved misfortune. While they're struggling even to have the money or get her to this school, another way is you create empathy by showing your highly skilled hero. She's certainly that. But she also seems, when they show the scene at the board and she's already gotten to the school, I think, because these people are all older, unless she's, with the high school kids, we feel like there's some degree of jeopardy because of the way it's set up. And so I felt like, as in creating initial empathy by introducing the character as a little girl, worked. But another thing you want to do early on in the story is you want to foreshadow. You want to create a situation that's going to repeat later, so that when it comes to the later thing, we'll recognize it. You might call it echoing too. And so the having to go in front of a group of people and be able to lay out a solution to a problem, even though they are all going in thinking you aren't going to have the ability to do that. That's going to happen repeatedly later in the movie when it gets to the important stuff. So I thought it was laying the groundwork for that as well. The last thing I think the prologue did is, I would argue that there is a single hero protagonist to this, and the other two women are close seconds. You could say it's a 3-hero story because we do eventually go to 3 different stories. But either way, the central figure is going to be the Taraji Henson character. And so they could have introduced it a different way, and we met each woman separately, and then you bring them together if they're all 3 heroes. But what this did is it started distinguishing the characters right away. And one of the things I thought was good about this scene, although you disliked it for perhaps the same reason, is you've got 3 characters in a car, and you've got to, especially in script form, when somebody's reading this, you're not going to recognize the names and you don't have actresses to look at. You've got to make a distinction between those characters. And a lot of times I'll see opening scenes like this and it'll say interior 57, that was a 57 Chevy, 57 Chevy, and they'll name the 3 women and just describe them. And once you do that, you're lost, because I just give up when I have 3 new characters all in one paragraph, because I know I'm never going to remember who's who, and I'll just hope that I can figure it out as I go along as a reader. Here, they're introduced individually. So one way is with the dissolve from the glasses, and she's wearing glasses, gazing into space again. Now, okay, that's the one who was the little girl. And then I think they highlight in that scene the distinctions among these 3 women so we can recognize who's who. Even if you were reading, no, I never read the script. I only am basing this on the movie itself. So immediately we see one is the sort of the biggest brainiac, the one who's introduced as a little girl, and she's also the one that's sort of in a world of her own and is not, she seems the least able to interact or take care of herself in that way. She's sort of not exactly shy, but kind of she lives in that world. The two people are going to really do what they need to do with the cop when he comes, or the other two women. So then we meet the woman, the Octavia Spencer character, and we meet her under the car. She's the one that fixes everything. And she's the one who knows how to toe the line. And we'll see that with the character. She always wants to go for what's going to work. She's not going to be, what does the cop say? Are you being disrespectful? She's never going to do that. She knows her place, and she doesn't want to push the envelope too much. And so she's the one who's, when he says, I didn't think they were hiring that many, and he's about to say black, only worse if it was then. And she says, there's a lot of women working there. So she keeps wanting to keep things calm, but that's part of why they're able to get the escort from the cop. And then the Monique, or whatever that actress's name is, when we see, I mean, one's gazing into space, one's fixing the car, and one's putting on makeup. Like you said, it's cliche, but it is a shorthand way of saying this other one, she's willing to sort of come out to the world and confront it. And she's the one right away, they say, I don't want to go to jail behind your mouth. By the way, that's dialogue where someone found a clever way to say, I don't want you to get in trouble because you're generally disrespectful. Okay, and so as soon as the cop comes, what does she say? But it's pretty hard. Let's see, we didn't pick the place, it picked us. And then the cop then says, are you being disrespectful? So I thought, as an illustration of how you can introduce characters and make them quickly distinct, I think that works. I also like the fact that we don't know that they work at NASA. I think if you said, if it had opened and it said on their way wherever they are, I don't really remember, she names it. But if we knew that going in, it's better that we learn that as the cop learns that. Again, it has to do with sort of, you don't have to give everything away the moment you open a scene. You can let us wonder, you can create some curiosity about, okay, because my assumption was they just happened to work together. Of course, if you've read ads for the movie, you probably knew it was about people who worked at NASA, but it's still revealing things more gradually and doing somewhat the unexpected with the cop. I like that. I think in retrospect, yeah, would it really have happened that way? Probably not, but I was willing to suspend that disbelief because it was a fun way to move from that moment, which is there again to primarily establish character and create empathy. And as soon as that jeopardy is there, now we're worried about these characters, and that's going to really strengthen. We feel sorry for them, we're worried about them. And it also immediately establishes we're in early 60s South, a very racist environment. And we didn't have to see film clips of riots, and we didn't have to have it's all subtext. I mean, never does he say, never is the word Negro used. It's just, but we immediately get by their demeanor and by his, yeah, this is scary times. This is a time where even seeing a car driving for you with a siren doesn't matter whether they're guilty of anything. They're like, it would be like, they didn't do it the same way, but it'd be similar to seeing the car of the Nazi colonel drive up to your farm. It's just not something you want to see. And so I thought for that, to establish distinct characters, to create empathy with those characters, and to foreshadow what's going to come or lay the groundwork for what's going to happen. Because also remember, as an opening scene, you can't let the story start moving forward yet. You have to wait until that sort of 10% opportunity. It doesn't really start to move until we get to NASA, and then we discover that there's a problem. They have to figure out how to get John Glenn into space and back. And, or at least they're there, and now they're in the new situation and we see what they're up against. But this is supposed to, in a certain way, be static. because that's what you want to open with, some static moment to lay the groundwork for everything before we start moving towards before we start really moving forward in any significant way. Let's see, there was one other thing. When it comes to conflict, the obvious one is the cop, but if you notice, there's a lot of subtle little conflict going on. I mean, and because I harp so much on your goal is to create emotion, and emotion grows out of conflict, which is, you're saying the same thing in a different way all the time, Erik. It's like they're not just driving along chatting, they're broken down. That's a problem that has to be solved. They can't start it. And then that's multiplied because only one of them seems to know what she's doing, and one of them's distracted, and one doesn't care she's putting on makeup. And they don't start out as best buds, even though they are. They don't start out, it's not like three women having a good time driving along, cracking jokes. That would not be emotionally involving. So they immediately start arguing. It's like the Taraji Henson isn't paying attention, so she can't start the car. The Monique character, doesn't even want to get involved because she's busy putting on makeup, and she leaves that to them. And then there's the business about, we don't want to get in trouble behind your mouth. So if you just look at even the way, in the subtle, small ways, there are obstacles that the characters are facing. All of that creates emotion. One of the things those obstacles do is it increases empathy, but it also just gets us more emotionally involved than if it's 10 minutes or 10% of the script is we're all happy and get along really well here and nothing really for us to worry about until the story kicks into gear. You lost your audience before you ever kick into gear if you do that kind of opening. So I'll probably think of more things, but those are the things I jotted down most. And I'm sorry you're just so wrong. I'm sorry you didn't appreciate this brilliant movie. I mean, it wasn't the greatest movie. It wasn't that. But if you think about a contrast to what, the bad scenes you guys made us watch, I thought this is a good example of a well-written scene to me, and also a good example of things you can do and must do when you open a movie. So, and I don't even want to ask everybody in the classroom what they thought, because I'm afraid I'm the only one who's going to like the movie now.
Well, I do, but I first want to say, you called Santa Clarita Diet crap, so I think we're even now.
Well, the difference is, though, it is crap. And
you
this
guys
one
know that
isn't.
show? Has anyone here seen Santa Clarita Diet on Netflix?
Yeah, that's true. I tried to watch it. I got into about 15 minutes.
I think it's a fantastic show, but it's a comedy, and I don't know if you're as into comedy as I am. But some people don't respect comedy; they respect high-minded dramas or dark dramas way more than comedy. And Michael may
does that sound like me? Does that sound like
I don't know.
Doesn't
you were all about Better Call Saul, and I was like, I like Santa Clarita Diet. Anyway, no, everything that you just said, I completely agree with. I wasn't trying to say this is a bad movie, it's not well done, this is bad writing, this is what you should not do in a scene. I actually agree with all of that. I was more reacting off your question of, does it make you want to keep watching the movie? So I just gave you my subjective viewer opinion. Is it my kind of movie or the way they did it? But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of mastery here. There's a lot of very smart decisions that help do the things that you described very well that needed to be done. One thing I definitely want to reinforce is this thing about introducing characters all at once with just the names on the page drives me crazy. It's one of the most common things I see in scripts is people will just say, like you said, interior 57 Chevy, the three names and like a slight description, one's heavy set, one's pretty or whatever. And it's like, okay. And then you just have them start talking. You need to reveal character through something memorable, preferably where there's some conflict and contrast, which is what they do. And you're right, in a very short order, they make us go, okay, we get who each of these three is and how they're distinct from each other. And now as we move forward on the page, we're going to remember who's who. When you're watching it, it's different actresses, it's easy. But on the page, readers can just be overwhelmed by names. And then they just have to go, okay, which one was that again? I have to go back to, was she the skinny one? Was she the whatever? It's like, it's not very satisfying. You want them to be distinctive in their personalities and have something about them that just makes us go, oh, she's that one. She's the brainy daydreamer math geek. oh, she's the one who's hot tempered and into her appearance or whatever. It's just that stuff's really important. But I am curious what you guys thought, having seen.
I think you asked everybody who had seen the movie already, and I didn't. Yeah. That screen is big. So raise your hand again if you have seen this movie before. Okay, only 2 of you. So those of you who hadn't, which is most of you, what was your reaction to seeing this without any anticipation of it? Anything you particularly like that we haven't mentioned, or dislike that we haven't mentioned?
I haven't seen the movie, so this was the first time I viewed this scene, and I really enjoyed it. I think that they might have been dragging out the scene with her as a little girl a bit too much, but I think that the tension in the following scene is amazing. And the thing you mentioned about never actually saying the word nigger, it's just kind of in the air, and the pressure from the police that they're never really stepping over. I think that's very well done.
Did anyone notice anything that neither of us mentioned at all that you either thought was well done or contributed to liking, or that you thought contributed to not liking it? Anything we haven't mentioned that you picked up on?
One minor detail I picked up on that I think contributed to setting up the tension somewhat is the way the police officer, the moment he steps out of his car, he goes directly to his baton.
Yeah.
Which makes you kind of, how to say, imagining a violent shoot first or ask later cop. I think that did contributed to the scene. Good point.
Yeah, I hadn't picked up on that, but you're right. And probably is revealing of character, because chances are he's not going to have to take it out. But I think just by putting his hand up, it's like, okay, let's make no mistake about what the power structure here is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Annette.
Hit me when I've seen this movie before, but I didn't pick up on it then. But now when I saw this clip, it just hit me that the grown girl, Catherine, right? When we meet her as a grown-up, and she moves around, outside the car, she goes and she's getting something and she moves back and forth, and I don't know, something just felt off for me, because as a girl she was very serious, very she had some sort of pose, I don't know, like an authority in a way. And then when I saw the actress act her as an adult, and she was moving like this, I don't know, it just felt, I don't know, it just hit me now. It didn't hit me when I saw it the first time, but it just felt a little like she was, she felt a little like a kid, or like not so mature, but she seemed so mature when she was a girl. You know what I mean? I don't know, it was just a moving, her movements.
You're talking about the one with the glasses who started the car then?
Right.
Was inside.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I didn't, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that or get that impression about it. So cool.
I just noticed it now when I saw it now. And it wasn't when she was in the car, it was when she was outside of the car. And she was, I don't know if she was reaching for her ID or something. And it was just this kind of, I don't know, just felt, it just hit me. I mean, this is a genius. She's been in these schools and she's a real genius. But she acts like, she moves at least like, I don't know. It just didn't seem like that it went with her character.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I didn't pick up on it myself consciously. Definitely, probably just an acting choice or unconscious even acting thing. I guess the question is, for most viewers, does it feel like that's a contradiction that makes the character feel less believable? or is it something that those two things can coexist in one character, being a math genius but also moving that way?
Sure.
I don't know if she does that throughout the movie. I don't remember if there's other instances of her being that kind of, person physically.
I think that even though I didn't notice it any time, and now that you pointed out, as I remember, yeah, she was sort of a bit jittery or whatever. I think an argument could be made that that was a choice, because one of the things that, to me, this character is still in a certain way kind of childlike. She's very much still like that girl in school. She's the one who in her head is a genius, but on the outside feels like she's out of place. And she's made to feel that way later on. And it could be that of the three, she was antsier or more nervous, or just felt like she's not really in the real world a lot of times. That's why she's gazing out. I can't say whether it was or not, or if that even helps, because it wasn't a problem for me. But if you analyze it, you could probably make that argument that it was a good choice, because she's like a kid getting punished, and the other two women are a little more grounded and a little more grown up in their own way. I don't know. Anyone else? Anybody else notice something good or bad that would be instructive, or we want to move on?
We can move on.
All right. Well, I think I might like to change order of scenes here. We clearly don't have enough time to do 3 more scenes, which is how many we have set up and ready. I was going to do the bodyguard next, which is this scene near the end of the final episode where the woman, Nadia, finally turns and reveals herself to be the evil mastermind. And I guess you guys had picked that as a bad scene. And I think I know why, because even though I didn't think the scene necessarily seemed bad on its own, a lot of critics thought that the series, it was like a bad ending to this. It didn't feel real, or that some people even said it was Islamophobic. And there was a lot of criticism of this series. It was hugely popular in Britain. My personal feeling was the first 3 or 4 episodes were brilliant, but once the Home Secretary died, I didn't like it as much anymore, and I didn't think it ended very strongly myself. But anyway, I have less to say about that scene. I have a little more I could say about the Whiplash scene, which was also on your list. So I was wondering, Arvid, if we might be able to play the Whiplash scene. Or is it going to throw you off to go out of order like this? I guess not. Okay, thanks.
Jimbo, overcooked. Barely chew this. He just laughed.
So how's the drumming going, Andy?
Yeah, it's going really well. I'm the new core drummer. So.
Tom Brady.
Did you hear it yet?
No, what happened? Drive got named this year's MVP.
That's fantastic, Travis. And Dustin is heading up Model UN, soon to be Rhodes Scholar, and who knows what all else. Wow. And Jim, Teacher of the Year.
Well, hey,
I
listen,
mean, come on, the talent at this table, that is stunning. And Andy, with your drumming.
It's going okay, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, it's going really, really well, actually. I'm part of Schaefer's top jazz orchestra, which means it's the best in the country. And I'm a core member, so I'll start playing in competitions. And actually, I found out I'm the youngest person in the entire band.
Well, how do you know who wins in a music competition? Isn't it subjective?
No.
Does the studio get you a job?
No, it's not an actual studio. It's just the name of the ensemble. But yeah, it's a big step forward in my career.
Well, I'm so glad you figured it out. It's a nasty business, I am sure. Oh, hey, are you going to tell them about your game this week, huh? Living up to your title?
What else? I scored a 93-yard touchdown.
School record, school record, school record.
That's true. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's Division III. It's Carleton football. It's not even Division II. It's Division III.
Got any friends, Andy?
No.
Oh, why's that?
I don't know. I just never really saw the use.
Oh, who you can play with otherwise? Lennon and McCartney, they were school buddies, am I right?
Charlie Parker didn't know anybody until Joe Jones threw a cymbal at his head.
So that's your idea of success, huh?
I think being the greatest musician of the 20th century is anybody's idea of success.
Dying broke and drunk and full of heroin at the age of 34 is not exactly my idea of success.
I'd rather die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
Ah, but your friends will remember you. That's the point.
None of us were friends with Charlie Parker. That's the point.
Travis and Dustin, They have plenty of friends and plenty of purpose.
I'm sure they'll make great school board presidents someday.
Oh, that's what this is all about? You think you're better than us?
Catch on quick, are you in Model UN?
I got a reply for you, Andrew. You think Carlton football's a joke? Come play with us.
4 words you will never hear from the NFL.
Who wants dessert?
And from Lincoln Center?
All righty. So good scene, I think, you know, has a good conflict that develops in the scene. You know, you feel for the main character in that people are not taking his stuff seriously or caring about it enough. And I think the emotion is palpable. There's a lot of good subtext in the dialogue. The one thing that I noticed, though, about this scene, and it's about the movie in general, is that for me, he's very sympathetic until he lashes out at them. You know, because I think you definitely easily feel for the guy who no one thinks what he does is as important. You can just tell. I mean, and it's very realistic the way it's written. It's not written in this kind of over the top way. It's like they ask him, they say, hey, that's good, but you can tell they're not really that into it, or they don't really understand or want to know more. And so I think it's easy to feel for him. But once he starts going at Division III and 4 words you'll never hear from the NFL and all that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, I'm on his side still. I think I agree with him, but it's an interesting thing. I'm interested in hearing Michael's view of this. It's like when a character has undeserved misfortune, which is, I always quote Michael's book as one of the great ways that you make the audience care about somebody, and yet there's still like a positive, you know, trying to do their best kind of person. You know, you really empathize with that. But when they have undeserved misfortune and then they decide to like try and like demean others or like win the fight or beat others down or make them feel bad because they feel bad, I think you tend to not like them as much. And for me, this movie wasn't my favorite movie in that I didn't care that much about the character. And it was just sort of like, well, he's got this really harsh band leader who's like a monster. But did I really relate to his drive as a drummer and his personality? I felt kind of lukewarm about it myself. And I think part of it is really it shows it in this scene is that he can be nasty, and maybe these other guys deserve it. But you know what? The football player never said, "Oh, you and your stupid drumming, you fairy," or something like that, right? So like he lashes out at the brother. I guess that's his brother, when it's really the father or the uncle who has been the one like kind of demeaning him. So it's not like the guy really deserved it. The football player really deserved to be talked to that way. So I can see the writers trying to make the character stand up for himself and be tough and like fight back. But in a weird way, for me, it makes me care about him less. What do you think, Michael?
Ditto. I feel exactly, I don't know that I have much to add to it. I think what you want to see, did you say you liked the movie, but it wasn't your favorite, or you really didn't like the movie?
I was very lukewarm on the movie.
Yeah. Here's my gauge. When I saw the movie, I liked it, and I told people I thought it was really good, and I've never seen it again. And generally movies that I really think are good, I want to see a second time, and I haven't been moved to do that. It's sort of like, I don't really, and I think part of it is what you said, I don't really want to be in this world and with this guy. I think it lacked the back and forth, and the lack of a real visible goal was part of the thing too. I don't know really clearly what we're rooting for and why we're so invested in it and so on. In a scene like this, and I had the same reason. I haven't seen it since it came out, and seeing it again, I had the exact same reaction you did. At first, it's like they did a good job of showing he's just getting ready, and then the brother comes in and everybody cheers, and we do feel sorry for him. I think in a scene like this, if you're going to have your hero ultimately lash out, we need to feel like they're trying to hold back. And when they finally do step up and say something, it is that first of all, yes, they're directing it at the person who deserved it. And it's more, okay, you pushed me this far, I'm going to say this. And when they say it, it's kind of clever. It's like, good, you got back at the people who are putting you down, but he wouldn't let it go. And then it becomes this, putting each other down and so on. So I probably would have taken some of it because I thought there were some things that could have been expressed without quite so much hostility and a little more of him being vulnerable as he said it. I thought the thing about, I'd like to be talked about, he was talked about, even though he died, he was talked about now and nobody remember him and so on. I think if that had been played a little more sympathetically or a little more like he was trying to hold it back, but he finally did, I think it might have been better. And the whole thing about, the class 3 football or whatever, it didn't exactly relate and it wasn't the right person to put it down. And so when he walked away, and I thought the best line in the whole conflict was Paul Reiser. He was the one in the green shirt. I don't know if he was the dad or he was the uncle, but whatever it was, when he said, "You're never going to hear from the NFL," and he said, "So have you heard from Lincoln Center?" Which is the equivalent, and he just didn't have an answer for that. I thought that was a great put down. It was just a put down at our hero from the wrong guy, and that was sort of the button on the scene. So it was an uncomfortable scene, and otherwise I'm just repeating what Erik said. It was tough. It had some good qualities, but overall my emotional involvement was not making me want to just root for this guy. Who chose the scene?
I did.
Who's that?
Me, Victor.
Oh, Victor again?
Yeah, of course.
Troll and Whiplash.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm interested in hearing anybody else's opinion here. Anything that anyone wants to add or questions they want to ask. Yeah, I see someone in the back there who hasn't spoke before.
I'm gonna shout it for
You've spoken already. You go first.
Yeah, I respect your opinion, but I think most of us in this room love this movie. And you couldn't hear it because we were on mute, but it was a lot about like, ooh, that sort of, and I agree he isn't sympathetic, but I think it works for this movie because that is his arc. And first you have him being put down and you feel sorry for him. And when he stands up for himself, we already root for him because he has been kicked on and we know what he's been through. And I relate a lot to all this, with your drumming or with your writing. Anyway.
Because you have to deal with Arvid every day, who's a lot like the guy he has to deal with, right?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, because this film, he will go sort of this nice guy into being a complete douchebag, and that is the film, and I really like his arc. And in the end, his dad tells him about the Lincoln Center, and that I think is sort of foreshadowing of what will become later, because he will go into the movie and it will become more of a douche, and it will bite him in the ass. So I really like the scene, and I really like the movie. I've seen it 3 times, and I've read the script also. So yeah, I like it.
And if I can chime in on that as well, the part you mentioned about him not holding back and jumping to being this mean guy and jumping on the soccer guys, that this is uncalled for. But this scene to me seems so familiar. Like they're having this dinner, and this is a dinner that they've had a lot of times because they're so friendly to one another. Their conversation is just exploding over the diner. And when I see, he's called Andy, right? Or what's his name? Yeah. And when Andy is reacting to it, I see instantly that this is not one thing that has happened once or twice. This has probably happened a lot of times that Andy has been in this specific situation. But what drives him this time is among that he's met Fletcher, or at this point, and the part that he's actually done something great.
is in this band, and even though he's not in this band, the family and the family friends doesn't recognize him as as what he is, a talented musician. And that's the reason why in this specific scene he explodes towards the family. Not because that he's not holding back. I think that he has held back a lot of times before because of the familiar situation that they're in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's true, and it's funny because I'm probably on his side in the argument. I mean, as an artist myself, I relate to his point of view more than the other people's, and I think he has every right to feel that way, and I understand why he would feel that way, and I understand why he would lash out. It's weird that for me as a movie viewer, and obviously not everyone feels the same way, the lashing out is kind of disappointing because I guess you want the hero to be the one that's sort of the underdog. And if he ends the scene getting the last word, which he kind of doesn't get the last word because of what his father says, but it's sort of like he gets the last word. It's not as, I don't know, for me, it's not as satisfying as when, the character is really the one who's losing sort of. And it's kind of like he won the scene in a way. And it's like, you kind of feel like he doesn't really care if they accept him after this because he's done with these people. And it's like, it's not like throughout the movie he's going to be trying to get their approval. I don't remember, but I don't think there's a lot more with the family. I could be wrong, but anyway, interesting. I mean, it's obviously at the end of the day, this is a subjective thing, and we're all disagreeing with each other on various things here. Hopefully, some of the principles are registering as we can all agree on certain principles, but in the execution of them in a particular scene or movie, there's variation. Like I said at the beginning, I think it is a good scene in general, and all the things I would look for in a scene. That's like just the one thing that personally I had that reaction that I mentioned. But I guess most of you feel the other way, right? Most of you, this is a movie that a lot of you are agreeing that didn't bother you, that he lashed out, or it didn't reduce your connection to the character. You were like right with him.
No, I like it.
No, I mean, since you have kind of a negative arc, this was just like the first step towards that arc.
Yeah. So it's one of those movies where the main character becomes less and less sympathetic over the course of the movie, and you're sort of, that's what you're going for. And I guess that's a thing that isn't my thing. Like, there aren't a lot of movies that do that I'm really a fan of. Maybe it's something I don't enjoy. It's certainly a non-traditional thing, but I'd love to hear Michael weigh in on this arc question, because he's the king of arc.
I don't have much of anything to add because it's not my thing either. There are movies that are out now, tragedies, where it's somebody who just ultimately can't find the courage to do what they need to do, and then they lose in the end because of that. But this kind of spiral downward. In fact, it's funny because I seem to remember that at the end of the movie he is sort of victorious, isn't he? Or he has finally doesn't he kind of win over his instructor, or did I just make that up?
Yeah, he does.
He does.
Yeah.
He wins, but he loses his father in a sense.
Yeah.
So he gives up his family and his friends and the love of his life for his dream. So that's sort of the theme of the movie. Like, can you have both? And in this thing, he chooses his dream of becoming the best drummer. So it's a bittersweet ending.
Yeah, I as I said, I liked the movie when I saw it. I haven't been moved to come back, but I think it is taste. I mean, it's not that I always like happy endings, but that kind of ongoing discomfort and ambivalence about what's going on is not really an experience I relish in a movie. So, but that just means that's my taste. Sort of leave the realm of helping you with your script and just saying that's my taste in movies. So I'm going to zero in on ones I don't. I certainly can see why you would pick this as a good scene. I thought it was not a bad one, but I would probably massage it. But because it's my taste, not because I really appreciate what you guys were saying. The whole thing about how this is adapted art and so on, I thought you guys really did, picked out things that I hadn't thought about in that way, and I thought were really good. So it can be a good example for you in your own writing. But that's about it. I'm just sort of rambling because I don't have anything too insightful.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left. Do you want to just try and show that last scene you had, and we'll have just a few minutes to talk about it? It might be a fun one to go out on. Might also be controversial.
Oh, yeah, well, sure. No, we got 2 minutes. Yeah, this isn't, you know, this isn't one we're going to, I find it, one of the things I think will be interesting, we're talking about the Crazy Rich Asian scene, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. This is going to be our third dinner scene, our third meal scene in this, and I thought that might be fun. So Arvid, go ahead and show that. I think it's very short. I think I only said do a short part of it while they're sitting at dinner. And if it's getting too long, I'll interrupt you because I don't think it's going to take too much for me to make my point about it.
I think it was from YouTube, this one. So we will see. So I roll it.
God. Piglin! What a match! Oh my God, you look amazing. I know, some things never change, right? And this is quite a place.
Esther! Vanderbilt! Rockefeller! Naughty boy, stop barking! Hey, Rachel!
Hi.
Singapore is so hot. Come in and enjoy the aircon. Come on. Whole family waiting to meet you. Very excited. Later. Welcome.
Wow. Oh my gosh, your house is amazing, Mrs. Go.
Call me Auntie. Auntie Nina.
Sorry, Auntie Nina.
Oh, yeah? We were inspired by the Hall of Mirror in Versailles.
And Donald Trump's bathroom.
Really?
Yeah.
You like it or not?
Oh, yes. The gold is very brilliant.
Rachel Chu, we are so grateful for all the help you have given my Pick Lynn back in her uni days. I mean, without you, she would be a hot mess.
Oh my God, no, actually, if it wasn't for her, I'd be a big mess. She was a huge help to me in college. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Go.
Nice to meet you too. Chu, cuckoo, could chew, you, poo-poo. I'm just kidding. I don't have an accent. I'm just messing with you. No, I studied in the States too. Yeah, Cal State Fullerton. Yeah, I majored in thought.
Don't stand on ceremony later. This is simple food lah.
Cha. Don't be shy.
Oh,
You're not a model.
I am definitely not.
No, you're not. Not at all. You're far from it.
I know.
Make sure you eat it all, because I'm watching you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Papa, can we go trampoline?
You haven't finished your nuggets yet, sweetie. Okay, there's a lot of children starving in America, right? I mean, take a look at her. She's American, huh? Really skinny. You want to look like that?
No.
Then eat your nuggets.
So, later, what do you do in America?
I'm an economics professor.
Oh, very impressive. Econ professor, eh? Wow, you must be very smart. Good for you. Let me get this straight. You both went to the same school, yet someone came back with a degree that's useful, and the other one came back as Asian Ellen.
We can stop now. I know there was only 1 minute and 50 seconds left, and I honestly couldn't take it anymore. One of the reasons
The best part is now still black.
I'm sorry, what?
It was nothing. Go on.
We haven't seen the best part yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's in the scene, I'm sorry, Arvid. Play the rest. I apologize. Let's see the best part of the scene.
What's that? She's a hottie. This is the kind of girl you should date. Smart, beautiful. Not those like K-pop skanks with like no brain, big eyes and small backsides. She has an amazing backside. This is gold standard. Don't be shy. Just talk to her.
I love you.
Okay? No, just
She's here with her boyfriend.
I don't see no ring on her finger.
Oh, well, my boyfriend's actually from Singapore, and that's why we're here. We're here to go to his best friend's wedding, where he's going to be the best man.
What's his name? This is a very small island. Maybe you know his family.
His name is Nick Young.
The Nick you're dating is Nick Young?
His best friend. You are invited to Colin Cole's wedding, ah?
Yeah, you guys know them or something?
Hells yeah. The Coos, the Youngs, I mean, who doesn't know who they are? They're just the biggest developers in all of Singapore, and Malaysia, Thailand, Brunei, New Mexico.
She gets it. Colin and Araminta's wedding is like Singapore's event of the century. The Youngs are like royalty. Did you not know? Does she not know?
What you never say before? Tell, what are they like?
I don't really know what they're. I mean, I haven't met them yet. I'm gonna meet them tonight. I'm going to Nick's grandma's house.
You're going to Nick's grandma's house wearing this? Wearing that?
Wait. I thought red was a lucky color, right?
Yeah, if you're an envelope, zing, nailed it.
Okay, you got to tell me, what was the best part we missed that was there? Which part, when they found out it was this family?
No, I love you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, that landed fairly well in the context. I thought it was the one reaction the father character gave that I thought was sort of a nice comedic beat, like when you know like you've gone too far, like you always do. So, okay, I would agree that that was the high point of the scene. The reason I picked this, because we were already doing 2 dinner scenes anyway, and I thought of it, but I've always been curious about this because this movie made a fortune. This was a hugely popular movie here and around the world, and it was just a big success. And
Except China.
Huh?
Except China. I heard it bombed in China, which was like an interesting.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Maybe my taste runs there. And I honestly could not get through it. I walked out of the theater because I found it so bad. But I'll open it up because maybe you contributed to all the money it made when you got your tickets and you loved it. But to me, it goes back to what we were talking about from the very beginning with Troll. In fact, I was more uncomfortable in this scene than I was watching Troll 2 because that had some unintentional humor. And it's because in this scene, beginning to end, I could not find a single moment of truth. There was absolutely no character, nothing that I could buy into. Everybody was so over the top. And I know it was satirical. I know it's sort of making fun of certain types in a situation. But there are so many movies that can do that deftly. And I think one of the reasons they do it is they heighten the reality of someone, make a little more extreme to satirize them or to portray a type, but they don't take them so far over the top that you have lost any recognition of their humanity. I mean, I think that the scene could have been good had they brought it way back, and even a few of the lines might have been okay, but the lines that worked to me were when they all sort of calmed down and it felt like, okay, that looks like a real scene, but all that sashaying around that the mother was doing and the father who looked like a Elvis impersonator and he being so demeaning or so sexist or whatever you'd call it with the way he described her. It's like, okay, is he so dumb that he doesn't know he's being offensive, or does he think that's fun? And so to me, it just, but the problem is I can't explain the success of it. It's just because then it just boils down to, I guess I don't have the taste. So the main thing about it is looking for the truth in any situation. And on top of that, it also lacks some of the basic things like Eric was talking about, or I was mentioning, is this, I don't know what the movement of the scene is. It seems like supposed to be weirdly funny and it's just expository. This is how we're going to learn that this is a big, important family, which you already sort of surmised anyway, but there's no real goal. There's nothing moving the scene forward to me. It's like if you take the previous one, if you take the Whiplash, there was a real sense that the hero there, the drummer, he wanted to get some respect for what he did, or at least wanted them to pay some attention to him and not put all the glory on the brother. So we sensed that he wanted something and there were real obstacles to getting it. And that conflict was conflict toward a goal. Here it just seems like people acting silly or stupid or whatever. So I don't have too much more because we don't have a lot of time, but I am curious about, I don't remember. Have you seen this movie, Erik? Did you see it?
Yes, I have.
And did you like it?
Well, before I give my opinion, I just want to show of hands how many have seen the movie in this room. So that's funny.
It's
5 women have all seen it.
It's a women's movie, okay.
Okay, so of those who saw it, how many of you liked it? Yes, so they pretty much liked it. Yeah, so you guys are really going to hate us and not think we have anything valuable to say after this. Nodding. Oh, well. No, I mean, we're in the minority. This is a huge popular movie. I actually didn't hate this scene as much as Michael did. I don't know if it's because I'm more a comedy person. I agree that it wasn't, some of it wasn't great. I mean, I agree that Ken Jeong's character was just so unmoored that it was hard to believe him as a real person in the scene. I like Awkwafina a lot. I think her performance is really good. That's the friend who's the Asian Ellen or whatever he calls her. I thought she was very natural and very funny and is launching a career for her, this movie. But to me, the central problem I had with the movie, and this is what commonly happens for me, kind of like what I said in Whiplash, is I didn't have a strong reason to care about the main character. I just didn't feel like she had enough going on to make me really invested in her situation. It's a romantic fairy tale movie that is a lot about the kind of production design porn, so to speak. It's just about the materialism, the beauty of the scenes and the houses and the clothes, and I think it sort of whisks you away, or it's trying to, into a kind of fairy tale. And she gets a lot of pushback from her fiance's mother, which is the main conflict in the movie. And I thought that was okay, but I just thought certain elements of the movie were not well written and did not feel real or interesting, and it took me out of it. And I didn't care about her journey that much. I didn't think she had that. I mean, I certainly wanted her to defeat the mother, but I kind of felt that the central couple were kind of wooden, really, like pretty and wooden, and not interesting or dimensional people, and there wasn't enough to make me really care. This scene, I felt, existed mainly just to give her the information that her fiancé is from this royal type family. The rest of it was just kind of like going for comic relief, but without much purpose, I thought, kind of like Michael said. So I did feel the scene kind of meandered, and it didn't feel like she had anything at stake in the scene. It's just her friend's wacky family. So what does it matter if they're weird? It's like uncomfortable for her and kind of for us when the guy talks about her backside and everything. But I guess I just wasn't feeling like, oh, this woman, and she's got such a difficult challenge here, and this is part of her challenge, and that would make it more fun and interesting to me. I mean, I thought the "I love you" line was funny, and it had some funny moments, but that was my basic take on it. So anybody care to chime in with what you guys thought? Maybe some of you who hadn't seen anything but this scene, or those of you who liked the movie and want to defend or give your view on the scene and the movie in general.
I mean, I like the movie. I've seen it once. This definitely isn't the best scene in the movie.
This is the best scene in the movie, did you say?
It isn't the best scene.
Yeah.
I think the
well, it's the funniest scene. It's not a movie that has tons of real comedy, right? It has certain characters who are comedic that come and go, but this is the most out-and-out comedy scene in the whole movie, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think the strongest scenes in this movie is with the main character when she meets her mother-in-law, and their relationship is definitely the strong part of this film.
Yeah,
that I like.
And also like the B story is also almost better than the main story. The B story about the sister and her husband and her cheating husband. That's almost a more powerful story.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, and I did laugh a few times in this scene. I just thought that the music was very terrible and in the way, because it kind of told what we saw in a way. I mean, it just told us how to feel, basically.
Yeah.
Because we already saw what was happening, and the music didn't add anything. It's annoying. But I laughed a few times.
Well, we're supposed to be done, so maybe we should wrap it up with, if anyone has any last questions about anything beyond this one.
I feel sort of bad adding on that one. It was sort of self-indulgent because I just put it out there because I still don't understand why it was so popular. But we should have ended with Inglourious Bastards, so we got to end with something that was just really great.
Yeah, we all agreed was good. Well, most of us. See, we didn't have complete agreement on anything, which is how it is, when you're evaluating movies. I mean, critics don't agree, audiences don't agree, really smart people don't agree. A lot of it does come down to individual taste. But of course, we're trying to teach principles that transcend taste, principles of scene writing. And of course, as we're watching these scenes, we get into debates about did you like the movie or the scene or not. But hopefully the principles come through as things that are important to have in scenes, which is what we're really here to talk about. Some of these things that good scenes have and bad scenes don't have, which got talked about more at the beginning than here in the latter half. But I could just repeat them over and over again with each scene, but I feel like that could get a little repetitive. But does anybody have any questions or last things they would like to, get our take on or anything like that? I know you don't respect our opinions at all now, but there might be something that you think we could enlighten you on.
I kind of just want to defend Crazy Rich Asians one more time, because it is. I think it was great. And I think the reason why I liked it so much was because, to me, I felt it was certain part of it that was really believable. The fact that the mother-in-law did not approve, I felt that was real for me. Like, there are families that don't approve of their kids, spouses, or whatever. That's really real. And considering difference from other many romantic comedies where there's this big misunderstanding and miscommunication, I felt in this movie it was a real problem that was almost impossible to be solved. And that's why I liked it.
Well, I agree with you. I think I would say probably my issue with the love story was I didn't feel that these two had to be together. They were the perfect counterpart, like Blake Snyder talks about in Save the Cat. You have an incomplete hero and a perfect counterpart. They both were like these kind of, to me, perfect, pretty kind of wooden people who nobody was imperfect in a way that made me feel for them or see how the counterpart was the one that had to be who they're going to be with. It didn't establish that kind of relationship. Michael talks about this, about how the love interest can see beyond the identity, the essence of the character, and see who it is they really are, want to be, that no one else can see, and that we want that character to turn into. I didn't think either characters had that kind of inner life, really. It was just like, there was something in the way of the relationship, you're right, but why do we care about the relationship the way great movie love stories make us care about whether two people end up together or not? I guess that's a side that I personally thought was kind of lacking. Michael, I assume you agree, so you really didn't like the movie at all.
Well, I'm sort of like, Republican who said, they're offended I haven't seen the movie. I didn't see it to the end. But I agree. Yeah, when I talk about love stories, one of the things I say is there has to be a real chasm separating the two people. And they have to overcome that, and also that idea that underneath their persona, their identities, that's where they're going to connect. At least the part of it I saw, I didn't see that. But I think the important thing is, you're right. If the reason, that identifying that what grabbed you the most or what moved you about it was the conflict underneath, and the fact that you liked a subplot about someone who's being cheated on, which sounds even like more conflict than I remember the main couple doing. That's one of the takeaways, whether I or Eric or anybody liked it or not. Just that idea that what I'd want you to take away is the more real on any level of any movie it rings true, the better it's going to be. And they always want to look for the conflict, big and little, in your scripts to keep people emotionally involved.
I noticed Annette typed in a question, does it have to have a happy ending? I guess you mean stories in general, movies in general. And I guess my quick answer would be no, although most commercially successful movies do, but they don't absolutely have to. But what it needs to have is an ending that feels satisfying and believable, where all the main problems of the story have been resolved in some way. They may not have to be resolved in a way that is happy for the audience, but they're resolved so that it feels complete. Michael, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, what I sometimes say is I think audiences will accept that life is hard or life is sad or that it's tragic, but they don't want to hear that life is shit. In other words, I think you want, taking away from the ending, you want to go away with some sense that we've learned something about what it means to be human, or it's even if it's a good, bad example of how we should act and behave and what we should strive for, or if it's a life lesson, but something where we can leave the theater thinking we have learned a little more or absorbed a little more about our humanity and being inspired in some way to avoid something or do something else. But if it's just, this is the way real life is, and real life usually ends in this bad way, I don't think that's what people go to the movies to see. I think they want to feel they've touched something in themselves that is more universal, that they can have some sort of uplift about when they leave the theater.
Yeah, I totally agree. Anybody else have any final questions or things they need to get off their chest?
We could stay and watch the rest of Troll 2 if you've got the time.
Not a question, but I just want to mention one last thing. I think that it's really amazing that we actually found a couple of scenes that we didn't agree on. Both we and you and Eric and Michael, you two along, because that's when you learn the most. I mean, we all respect each other's opinions, and being able to hear you like one scene and Michael not liking the same scene, I think that's amazing. And that we can learn a great deal. And I love what he said about that neither of you really didn't like or didn't love the Whiplash. I personally love it, so I really enjoyed hearing your opinions about it.
Good.
Well, that's great to hear that in the end the conflicting opinions is actually helpful. I think it makes a more entertaining class, but hopefully it makes you all feel like you get value off of all the different opinions and realizing how complex this whole thing is in terms of, you don't just write something and you get an A and everybody loves it. It's always more complicated than that. It might be great and some people might hate it. That's always a possibility because it's not their thing. And you're going to be successful if you please a certain number of people, but you're never going to please every person. But to get to the place where one can work professionally and make a movie that people can, some think are bad and some good, but at least movies are getting made, usually means they've mastered some of the basics, which, as I said in the beginning, most of these scenes, the writers have mastered the basics. The things that me and Michael see all the time on the page that we critique, a scene doesn't have conflict, doesn't have a point of view, no one has an agenda, it's just information exchange, it's just people having good times, you can't tell the characters apart, it's not fun to watch, no driving desire to see what happens, all those kind of things. Most of these scenes didn't suffer from those problems, but most scenes that most writers write who are starting out do suffer from those problems. Even writers that aren't starting out, even writers that have been doing it a while, like it's hard to get past some of those things. And the movies you actually see on screen, most of them have gotten past all of that, even though we can all disagree about whether we love that movie or if it's our kind of movie or if a scene was as good as it could be. So any final words of wisdom, Michael, before we let these fine people go about their evening?
Just thanks for inviting us back.
Yes,
I think next time we do one of these, maybe it should be about comedy. So, because I get the feeling you don't think I like comedy, and that's just not true. But
it's not that you don't like it; you just don't understand it. I think, Michael, is the problem.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm sort of shallow, so that is a possibility. Okay, thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks,
this is
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
You guys. Bye, everyone.